let's talk alcohol. And there's a big kind of a trend right now too about people going off of drinking and a lot of talks about the effects of alcohol. Let's talk about it first for athletes and then also for everyday people. Like, what have you seen with as far as how alcohol can affect performance, not just obviously like in the present, but like for days after like heavy drinking for athletes?
Once I started tracking my sleep,
Mhm.
probably 6 or 7 years ago, one of the things that I would do just as an experiment on myself is Friday night, Saturday night, go out to dinner with the wife, have a couple glasses of wine, right? What I've noticed and what I've realized over the last, 6 or 7 years of tracking my sleep is that one single drink close to bedtime
Mhm.
absolutely destroys my sleep.
Mhm.
It's done. You might as well take that night and throw it out. No matter how long you lay in bed,
Yeah.
it's every device I have yells at me.
Mhm.
And it's not because of anything other than what the alcohol does to you from the inside. Now, we're not even talking about the hormonal response to that,
Mhm.
whether it's the alcohol or whether it's the lack of sleep due to the alcohol that compounds the hormonal effects of that. Super, super important to avoid it at all costs. Now, I'm not naive. I understand who the demographic is I'm working with. And I also understand that people need to go out and be social and have a good time for quality of life and to feel good. So I think the biggest thing is to try to educate yourself on how to mitigate some of the negative effects of alcohol and not. Now, one thing, if I know that, I'm at an event or I have something planned where I may have some alcohol, typically what I like to do is do that during the day
Mhm.
because by the time I go to sleep, I don't have a negative sleep because of
Yeah.
that alcohol. So, which is really interesting to me. It's like 5 hours,
Mhm.
so if I go to bed at 10 o'clock and 5 o'clock hits,
Yeah.
then I start my
Done.
mitigation procedures,
Yeah.
so to speak,
Mhm.
to get myself ready for bed. I'm often okay. But there's still the alcohol ingestion and the effects of that
Mhm.
that you get. You just don't have the compounded effects of the sleep as
Yeah.
well.
You mentioned the mitigation. Is there anything that you tell your athletes or would tell just everyday people who still want to perform well and sleep well after drinking that you can do? Say you don't stop by 5 o'clock, but you are home by 10. Is there, hey, drink a Pedialyte, make sure you eat something? What is the mitigation effects if you do happen to drink at later and still want to have decent sleep?
Right. You mentioned it, the rehydration part.
Mhm.
But then again, what happens when you drink a ton of liquid right before bed?
Yeah, you're
You're
peeing all
getting
night.
up all night and you're going to the bathroom. So then it negatively affects your sleep too. So there really isn't one thing, but certainly liquid IV, Pedialyte, drip drop, all the different,
Mhm.
element, all the different types of sort of electrolyte things are, it's not a bad thing to consider. Um, but ultimately, for me personally, I try to avoid it
Mhm.
at all cost and within reason to still be able to be social and do what you
Yeah.
need to do. But, and listen, this is coming from somebody that did all the wrong things
Mhm.
in his younger days, all the wrong
You've been
things,
there.
all of them,
Yeah.
being a Division I athlete and doing all the wrong things.
Mhm.
And I always thought I was a step ahead, but in reality now, knowing what I know, I wasn't
Mhm.
in reality.
Yeah.
And that's one of my biggest regrets as a man is that how much better could I have been when I was younger if I didn't make some of the choices that I made in my life, because I know now as a 40-year-old how alcohol affects me, because I have data and analytics that tells me that, and then I also have my opinion. I didn't know that when I was younger. I didn't have that data and those analytics, and I didn't even realize or acknowledge that it was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I really like to educate certainly my athletes on all those things we just talked about, because oftentimes they don't know, or they think, oh man, I'm a beast.
Yeah.
I'm a beast, man. I can
hungover.
go out all night and I can kill your workout the next day. I said, yeah, maybe, but you can't do it every day, you know, and you probably could have been better if you didn't, but you're that freaky that maybe you can get away with that sometimes.
I remember when I was at Penn State, one of our strength coaches there used to always say that if you had a big workout, like if you did big squat Friday and then you went out Friday night, that you ruined the last 3 days of workouts that you just did. Is that total BS, or is there some kind of validity to that, or some data that points to that?
It depends. I've seen really high responders to training. So like, you know, really, really freaky gifted athletes that had a pretty hefty social life and still made incredible gains in the program. I've also seen some athletes that couldn't sustain the workload. And ultimately, well, one of two things happens. They get sick or they get hurt. And what those two things are is your body telling you, you can't do this at the pace you're doing it because I'm not on board with this. And there's a lot of negative implications to that, you know, obviously.